Nadhim Zahawi is the Conservative Party chairman and a cabinet minister. Last year, for 2 months, he was Chancellor of the Exchequer, the person with ultimate responsibility for tax collection in the UK. And Mr Zahawi was dealing with some personal tax issues too. The BBC's Chris Mason understands that while Chancellor, he paid around £5 million to settle a tax dispute, which included paying a penalty. The Guardian reports that 30% of the overall amount, £1 million, was the penalty in question, though the BBC can't confirm that detail. For his part, Mr Zahawi says HMRC told him the penalty was for a careless and not deliberate error. And last week, Rishi Sunak said this.
Mr Speaker, my honourable friend has already addressed this matter in full, and that's nothing more that I can add.
But this weekend, along with many of us, Number 10 says Rishi Sunak learned more details. And now he's saying this.
Clearly in this case there are questions that need answering, and that's why I've asked our independent advisor to get to the bottom of everything, to investigate the matter fully.
Nadhim Zahawi has welcomed the investigation, and to understand the story behind it, we need to go back to 2000, well before Nadhim Zahawi was an MP. It was then that he co-founded the polling company YouGov. Now his co-founder, Stephen Shakespeare, took just over 40% of the shares in the company. Mr Zahawi, though, took none, but around 40% of shares were allocated to a company called Balshaw Investments, which was based not in the UK, but in the British Overseas Territory Gibraltar, which has a history as a tax haven. 5 years later, and we'd learn more about this company. The prospectus for a sale of YouGov shares describes Balshaw Investments as being a company beneficially owned by Nadhim Zahawi's parents. And last year, questions about this arrangement started to emerge. The Independent reported Chancellor Nadhim Zahawi's tax affairs under investigation by HMRC, and Mr Zahawi was asked by Sky News if his family benefited from an offshore trust.
I don't benefit from an offshore trust, nor does my wife. We don't benefit at all from that. My mother and father live abroad. That's their business. They don't live in the United Kingdom.
Mr Zahawi has offered more information this weekend. He says, when we set it up, meaning YouGov, I didn't have the money or the expertise to go it alone, so I asked my father to help. In the process, he took founder shares in the business in exchange for some capital and his invaluable guidance. In other words, Mr Zahawi says, in part because of help he received, he gave his parents 40% of the shares in YouGov. And the question of who was benefiting from Balshaw Investments goes to the heart of this story. Dan Needle's a Labour-supporting tax lawyer who's been investigating the matter. He claims that the trust made at least £27 million of capital gains by selling its YouGov shares. That's Mr Needle's calculation, not the BBC's. He also estimates that if this was liable for UK tax, approximately £3.7 million would have been owed. But last week, the representative for Mr Zahawi reiterated neither he nor his direct family are beneficiaries of Balshaw Investments or any trust associated with it. And hearing that, you might ask, well, why has Mr Zahawi just settled a multi-million-pound tax bill? Well, we don't have all the details. But back in July, Dan Needle highlighted one detail that he claims may be relevant. He wrote, a chance company law error means YouGov IPO documents disclosed that a £99,000 dividend from Balshaw was redirected to Nadhim Zahawi. This figure can be found in YouGov documents. It would appear to contradict some of Mr Zahawi's statements. And so, if this story is in part about tax, it's also about Nadhim Zahawi's account of what happened. In a statement last July, he said, these smears have falsely claimed that the Serious Fraud Office, the National Crime Agency and HMRC are looking into me. Let me be absolutely clear, I'm not aware of this. I've not been told that this is the case. This is at the same time Mr Zahawi was Chancellor, the same period the BBC understands he settled his tax dispute with HMRC. Now, Mr Zahawi denies any deliberate wrongdoing. He hasn't confirmed if he's received any money from Balshaw Investments. But already, the opposition Labour Party has seen enough.
I think it's obvious that Zahawi can't stay as Tory party chair. The very idea that he can be discussing and negotiating his own tax affairs with the body that he's supposed to be running, everybody knows it's wrong.
Mr. Zahawi was settling his own tax affairs with the body that he had ultimate responsibility for. And now Rishi Sunak must decide if that matches the integrity, professionalism and accountability that he promised from this government. In the meantime, we wait on the investigation and to see if Mr. Zahawi addresses the outstanding questions about who benefited from those YouGov shares.